iPhone XR has been out for just over a month, and I've been using it, sometimes side by side with an iPhone XS, oftentimes on its own, and for the last few days, side by side with an iPhone 6S. Because I wanted to get a sense not just of how cool the new colors are, though they are, or whether the display and camera systems were deal breakers compared to the iPhone XS, which really depends on the individual, but how much of a difference the upgrade will make to a real person in the real world. And a lot of people considering the XR, people who don't get a new phone to review every couple days, weeks, or months, have been using the same phone for a couple of years, or a few years already. That's the 6S. Maybe the 6, SE, or 7, but mostly the 6S. And if that's you or someone you're close to, I want to take my head out of the tech bubble for a minute and put myself in your shoes, or your upgrade path. Maybe you're ready to upgrade and you're considering giving up the familiarity of the home button and try out the full screen feature. But you're wondering if the $750 upfront or the few extra bucks a month on your carrier plan is worth it for the XR. I'm Rene Ritchie. Welcome back to Vector. Let's re-review this. One of the biggest things going for iPhone XR is battery life. Out of the box, it gets 25 hours of talk time, 15 hours of web browsing, 16 hours of video playback, and 65 hours of audio. That compares to 14 hours, 10 hours, 11 hours, and 50 hours, respectively, for an iPhone 6S. That's about 1.5 times as much battery life on its best day, or if you've already gotten a battery replacement. Mine was at 88% before I got the swap. Now it's back up to 100%. Either way, it makes a real difference, not just because of the capacity, but because of the workload. Back when I first got my iPhone 6S at launch in 2015, my typical usage was just starting to get more demanding. Snapchat and Facebook have come and gone for me already, but they were huge battery hits when I was using them. Instagram and even Twitter still are. Thanks to video and stories with rendered and geo-based filters, they're always downloading and displaying media, pulling GPS, and otherwise hitting the battery hard. I watch a lot more YouTube now than I did then, not coincidentally. And my single biggest battery drain remains Pokemon Go, which didn't exist when the iPhone 6S launched, but debuted the following summer, and its combination of screen on time, data, rendering, and GPS just brought most phones to their knees, or rather their red zones. So just for fun, I took both phones out for Pokemon Go's Community Day this past weekend, and even with both batteries near full health, the iPhone 6S was almost dead at the end of 4 hours, and the iPhone XR could have easily gone 4 more. I literally quit before it did. I said in previous years that Apple had to start testing not for the light web browsing and email checking of the past, but the social, photo, and video and gaming realities of the present, and with iPhone XR, even more than iPhone XS, they have. You can play Fortnite at 60 frames per second on iPhone XR. I mean that literally. Emphasis on the you can. Me, personally, I can die at 60 frames per second now, and I can die well, but if you can actually play the game and win, you can do it pretty damn gloriously on the iPhone XR. And that's something you still can't do on a lot of flagship phones these days. Same goes for pretty much any high-end game that supports it, but also heavy-duty computational photography filters, video effects, machine learning models, and more. AR Quick View, by the way, where you tap a web link and suddenly you're in augmented reality, is one of those features that makes you think you're living in the future, and it runs on iPhone XR well. We knew from the start that Apple's A12 Bionic was going to be a beast of a processor, but that's really borne itself out. Rendering short videos feels like saving images, and saving images feels like, instant. Because there aren't that many pixels to move around, even and especially the interface moves like it's on a hair trigger. 2 years ago, portrait mode could peg an iPhone 7 Plus. Last year, AR an iPhone 10. This year, some of that kind of stuff can still come close, but there's just so much headroom that I think it's going to take a year or two before we see anything really put the A12 through its paces. And since one of the reasons Apple puts so much power into its chipsets is so that they'll be able to handle updates for the next 4 or 5 years, if you're planning on keeping your iPhone XR anywhere nearly that long, even as a hand-me-down, it should legit more than last. For most people, the biggest change moving from an iPhone 6S or any traditional iPhone to the XR will be the loss of the home button. Tech hot takers can bemoan Apple's quote-unquote boring design all day long, but for everyone else, consistency is a tangible user benefit, and the home button was a tactile escape hatch that could reorient us whenever anything got the least bit dodgy or confusing. That's almost certainly why, more than a year into the age of iPhone X, we hear anecdotes about how well last year's iPhone 8 and iPhone 8 Plus are still selling. Not just because of their discounted price, but because of their consistency with previous generations. Their familiarity. iPhone XR though brings that next generation almost full screen iPhone experience to the table, and for considerably less than the more expensive than ever flagship. In fact, the XR screen is pretty much as big as an iPhone 6s, 7, or 8. In place of the home button is an upward swipe and gesture-based navigation system that took me about a day to get really truly used to. Now, a year later, it's not just tough to go back, it's legitimately slow. In place of Touch ID is Face ID. There are a couple edge cases where it doesn't work as well, like if you want to reach over and unlock the phone without picking it up, or if you want to have multiple people registered. But in every other case, it's not just faster, but so fast it feels almost transparent, especially with logins. Since the iPhone XR has the same improved TrueDepth camera and faster A12 secure enclave as the XS, you're not giving up anything for the difference in price either. I feel like the iPhone XR display has been beaten to undeath now, and all we have left are zombie lich arguments. While some people whose knowledge of display tech seems to go only spec sheet deep raised a lot of fuss about the resolution and pixel density before launch, which is kind of like complaining about a Ferrari just because it has fewer tires than a Mack truck. Anyone who knew anything about pixel quality versus pixel quantity and, context took a wait-and-see attitude, and generally have really liked what they've seen. Especially in Jonathan Morrison's delightful blind look test between the iPhone XR and a 1080p Android display. No spoilers, watch the whole thing. But
so there you have it. I think this is a lesson again, don't judge a book by its cover, or in this case, don't judge a phone by its specs on paper.
the truth is, Apple's display team has gotten so good at everything from color calibration to color management that you can put an LCD iPhone XR next to an OLED iPhone XS and, unless you're looking for deep, deep blacks and can discern high contrast ratios, scarcely tell the difference, which is insane given how different those two display technologies really are. Since filming my initial review, I've also heard from people who suffer varying degrees of vertigo from the variable refresh rates on OLED, but don't have that problem at all with LCD, and are super happy that Apple is still offering both, and in the new design. The bezels remain a bit thicker, not than the top and bottom on iPhone 6s or similar, but on the sides, and then there's the notch. The black faceplate helps minimize it, and while you can never not see it, you do stop noticing it, especially because the screen, by comparison, feels so much more expansive and opened up. It's the same density display as the 6S, 7, and 8, just with more pixels to fill out the edge to rounded edge. And with all the DCI P3 wider color gamut, True Tone dynamic color temperature matching, and other advances Apple has made since then. You can even put it into display zoom mode, like the Plus and Max sized iPhones, so everything looks bigger, and if you have been squinting to see things before, you won't have to anymore. About the only step back you'll notice is 3D Touch if you use it a lot. The XR doesn't have it. It has haptic touch instead, which, while it's okay in the few areas it's implemented, just isn't a full real replacement yet. If all you did was adjust levels in Control Center, you may not notice the difference at all. If you peeked and popped all over the place, like I did, you'll miss it, or at least find the XS much more attractive. There are going to be people who want to upgrade to higher density and to OLED on the XS, and fair enough, but for everyone who doesn't give a damn about the display technology and who doesn't look at their phones from less than a foot away, you won't notice a difference. In fact, I do care deeply, and a lot of the time I forget which one I'm looking at. I also care a lot about the cameras, and this has been the biggest sticking point for me. I've lived on a dual system and 2x zoom since iPhone 7 Plus, and it's been a challenge to go back to shooting with just one. It's been really interesting though, the sneaker zoom, the framing, all of it. It's like shooting with a 6S again, but though both cameras are 12 megapixel, the better aperture, higher quality sensor, and all the power of the A12 image signal processor makes them feel worlds apart, especially in more challenging settings like low light or higher movement. Apple's purely computational portrait mode on the XR ends up being a very different beast from the Fusion version I've been using since the iPhone 7 Plus and still use on the XS. I prefer the latter, but being able to shoot with far greater flexibility in lighting and range has been liberating. Yes, it's still limited to humans and their faces, which is a drag, but since Apple's built a unique virtual lens model just for the wide angle, different from the telephoto, you get shots that the previous portrait mode just could simply never deliver. I still wish the XS offered both, but with the depth control now offered even in preview, when other vendors still can't even do the basic depth effect in preview, the XR has proven more than solid on its own. It's proven fun. That's especially true for shooting video, where the 10R, like the 10S, can shoot in extended dynamic range up to 4K 30 frames per second, and regular dynamic range up to 4K 60 frames per second, and in stereo, which works better than it has any right to given you're just using a tiny camera phone. It really does make the iPhone 10R competitive, not with other phones, but with other video cameras. Stereo playback is also terrific. I've watched a bunch of shows and films now with the new wide stereo speakers, and it's the first time I felt like I didn't really need headphones when I didn't have to, and I've actually enjoyed what I've been listening to, and I'm not one who's ever been particularly fussy about audio. Portrait selfies, Animoji, Memoji, and all the AR on the front is exactly the same as the iPhone XS as well, and light years ahead of the selfie cams on older, traditional iPhones. Yeah, some of it feels like a gimmick, but when it's approaching the holidays and you can just Santa hat or elf yourself, especially in the new group FaceTime feature, a few gimmicks aren't such a bad thing. Ho, ho, ho. This is the part of the re-review where I'm supposed to just make up a bunch of stuff I hate about the iPhone XR, just so that the people in the comments won't call me biased or just of being a fanboy, because the internet loves to mistake cynicism for intelligence, and being negative, even to the point of incredulity, with being cool. Well, bluntly, screw that. iPhone XR is a legit great product, and it's going to be a great phone choice for a lot of people. And if you can't see that, I can help you with that. Simple Contacts lets you renew your expired contact lens prescription and reorder your brand of lenses from your phone or computer in minutes. You can take the Simple Contacts vision test online in 5 minutes. A real doctor reviews it, and if your vision hasn't changed, renews your subscription. And if you already have an unexpired prescription, just upload a photo of it or your doctor's info and order your lenses in minutes for a great price. Best of all, you get $20 off your first Simple Contacts order just by going to simplecontacts.com/vector or entering vector at checkout. This isn't a replacement for your periodic full eye health exam. You still need that, but it is the most convenient way to renew a prescription and reorder your contacts if your vision hasn't changed. Again, get $20 off your first Simple Contacts order just by going to simplecontacts.com/vector or entering vector at checkout. Thanks, Simple Contacts, and thank you all for supporting the show. For me, personally, even though I like the colors and size of the iPhone XR the best, the OLED-enabled HDR video and the dual camera system will keep me on the iPhone XS, at least on the long term. But my job isn't just to review technology for me or people like me, it's to review it for everybody, for you. Some people will want the deeper, brighter display, others the ability to shoot at 2x, and still others the sheer size of the iPhone XS Max. But 1 month later, for everyone else, I think the iPhone XR isn't just the colorful spot in Apple's next generation iPhone lineup. It's the sweet spot. At least that's what I think, but now I'd love to hear what you think. Hit like, hit subscribe, and then hit up the comments below and let me know. And thank you so much for watching.